Put your hand on your belt line, just above the buckle, and press in gently. Feel that. Behind your hand, tucked in under your stomach, sits a strip of tissue about as long as your palm. Every meal you have ever eaten, it has been the one cleaning up after you. Millions of meals, not one day off. And here is the part almost nobody gets told. How hard it has to work at lunch today has less to do with what is on your plate than with the pattern you put it in your mouth. Same food, same portion, different pattern, different number. That is exactly what I am going to show you today. The specific foods that bring your blood sugar down fastest after 60, and the pattern that makes them work 2 or 3 times harder than they do on their own. Before we go further, let me clear away the answers you have already tried. This is not about cutting out bread. It is not about going low carbohydrate. It is not about giving up fruit. And it is not about eating less at every single meal until you are hungry all afternoon. If any of those had solved it, you would not be here. There is one specific change I am going to give you that took a man I will tell you about from a 3 o'clock crash every single afternoon to no crash at all, without removing a single food from his diet. Stay with me all the way through. I am Dr. James Weatherly, and this channel exists for one reason. After 60, the things that quietly wreck your health are almost never dramatic enough to bring up in a 15-minute appointment. Nobody books a visit for an afternoon slump, so it never gets explained, and you end up assuming it is just what getting older feels like. Let me reframe what is actually happening in your body after you eat, because once you see it correctly, everything else today will make sense. Think about a small-town road crew. One crew, a finite number of trucks. When traffic arrives steadily through the day, they handle it easily. Cars come in, cars get sorted, everything moves. But if every vehicle in the county arrives at the same intersection in the same 4 minutes, that same crew is suddenly overwhelmed. Not because the crew got weaker, not because there were more cars overall, because they all arrived at once. That is glucose. Your blood sugar spike after a meal is not really a story about how much sugar you ate. It is a story about how fast that sugar arrived. The total can be identical and the experience completely different. A slow arrival, your insulin handles calmly. A sudden flood, and your pancreas has to slam out a huge burst of insulin to catch up. And that overshoot is what drags you down into the crash an hour or two later. So the symptom, the 3 o'clock fog, the sweet craving, the heavy eyelids, is not the problem. It is a signal. It is your body telling you that the traffic arrived all at once again. And this gets missed for an understandable reason. When you have your blood work done, you get a fasting number, taken first thing in the morning before you have eaten anything. That number can look completely fine while your after-meal numbers are climbing high twice a day, every day, for years. Nobody is being careless. The standard test simply looks at the quietest moment of your day and reports back that all is well. Let me tell you about Richard. Richard was 63. A tax accountant in Duluth, Minnesota, and he did not come to see anybody about his blood sugar. His daughter noticed first. She had started calling him on her drive home from work, and after a few months she told him she had figured out his schedule better than he had, because if she called before 2, he was sharp and funny, and if she called at 3:30, he was slow and flat, and got off the phone quickly. She thought he was depressed. He thought she was being dramatic. What she was describing was real, though. Richard had a chair by the window where he took his afternoon coffee, and for about 2 years he had been falling asleep in it. Not napping on purpose. Falling asleep sitting up, at 3 in the afternoon, with the crossword on his knee that he had stopped bothering to finish. Around 3:15, he would go to the cupboard for the shortbread cookies his wife bought, eat 4 of them standing up, and feel better for about 40 minutes. He was certain he knew the cause. Age. Poor sleep. Too many years of tax season. He had already cut back on desserts and switched to wheat bread, and it had changed nothing, which only confirmed to him that it was just age. His lunch was, on paper, entirely reasonable. A turkey sandwich on whole wheat, a small bag of pretzels, an apple, and a glass of orange juice. Nothing anybody would call junk food. Here's the first genuinely useful thing I want to give you, and you can use it at your next meal. Richard's lunch was not too big, and it was not too sweet. It was too fast. He drank the juice first, standing at the counter, then ate the pretzels while he was still working, then the sandwich, then the apple. Every single fast-arriving carbohydrate went in first into an empty stomach, with nothing in front of it to slow it down. The entire county of traffic hit the intersection in 4 minutes. Now, if what I just said made you think about your own lunch, do me a favor and stay with me, because this only gets more useful from here. And if this channel is new to you, subscribing genuinely helps. Not for my sake. There are a lot of people in their 60s and 70s falling asleep in a chair at 3 in the afternoon who think it is just age, and every subscriber makes it more likely this reaches one of them. That is the whole mission here. Now let us get into why the order works. There is a valve at the bottom of your stomach. It controls how quickly what you have eaten gets released down into your small intestine, and the small intestine is where sugar actually crosses into your bloodstream. Nothing you eat raises your blood sugar until it clears that valve. Doctors call the speed of that release gastric emptying. Think of it as the door at the bottom of a funnel. Here is what almost nobody realizes about that door. It does not open at a fixed speed. It reads what arrives first and adjusts. Send liquid sugar down onto an empty stomach and that door swings wide. Orange juice on an empty stomach is in your bloodstream faster than almost anything else you could drink. Send fat and protein down first, and the door tightens noticeably, because your body knows those take real work to break apart, and it will not push them through quickly. Send fiber down first, and something else happens. Soluble fiber pulls in water and turns into a soft gel, and that gel physically coats what comes down after it, so the starch has to work its way through the gel before it can even reach the wall of your intestine. So when you eat your salad first, you are not just being virtuous. You are laying down a filter that everything else has to pass through. This has been tested directly. Researchers at Weill Cornell ran a study where people with type 2 diabetes ate the exact same meal on 2 different days. Same food, same portions, same people. One day they ate the carbohydrate first. The other day they ate the vegetables and protein first and saved the carbohydrate for last. The after-meal glucose was substantially lower on the vegetables' first day, and the insulin response was lower too. Nothing was removed, nothing was reduced, only the order changed. Let that sit for a second. Same plate. Same calories, meaningfully different number in your blood. Richard did not believe it. He was an accountant, and his objection was reasonable, which is that the food ends up in the same stomach either way, so what could it possibly matter? That is exactly the right question, and the answer is that your digestive system is not a bucket. It is a line, and what is at the front of the line changes how fast the whole line moves. So we are about halfway through, and I want to remind you what I promised. The best foods to bring your blood sugar down fast after 60, and the pattern that makes them work far harder than they do alone. We have covered the pattern. Now let me give you the foods, and then I will tell you what happened with Richard, because there was a second thing going on with him that the meal order alone did not fix, and it is more common than the first. Start with the greens, and I want to be specific rather than vague. Spinach, kale, cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, green beans, cauliflower, asparagus. What makes these work is not some special compound. It is that they deliver a large volume of fiber and water with very little starch attached, which means they fill the funnel and set the gel without adding much sugar to the load. A cup of cooked greens before your meal is doing mechanical work. It is not a garnish. Vinegar is the second one, and this is the one that surprises people. A tablespoon of any vinegar in water, or a vinaigrette on that salad, taken shortly before or at the start of a carbohydrate meal, consistently lowers the after-meal glucose rise in studies. The acetic acid appears to slow that stomach door, and also seems to interfere with the enzyme that chops starch into individual sugar molecules. So the starch breaks down more slowly, which means it arrives more slowly. Use it in food. Do not shoot it straight. It is hard on tooth enamel and on the lining of your throat. And if you have reflux or a history of ulcers, ask your doctor before you make this a habit. Protein is third. Eggs, fish, chicken, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, beans, lentils. Protein slows the stomach door, and it also triggers gut hormones that prime your insulin response before the sugar even arrives, which means your body is ready rather than reacting. Beans and lentils are worth special mention because they are protein and soluble fiber in the same package, which is unusual and very useful. Nuts, fourth. Almonds, walnuts, pecans, pistachios. Fat is the strongest brake on that stomach door of anything you can eat. A small handful of almonds before a carbohydrate-heavy meal measurably blunts the rise. A small handful, not a bowl in front of the television. Fifth, and this one is not a food at all. Cinnamon has modest evidence, and I would not build a plan on it. But a 10-minute walk after you eat is not modest at all. When your muscles contract, they can pull glucose out of your blood without needing insulin to open the door for them. It is a completely separate pathway. So a walk after dinner is your muscles quietly taking sugar out of circulation while your pancreas rests. 10 minutes. Not a workout. around the block. If you have been eating in a particular order your whole life without ever thinking about it, tell me in the comments what goes in your mouth first at dinner. I am genuinely curious what the most common answer is, because I suspect most people have never once considered it. Now back to Richard, because his story does not end where you would expect. He tried the order: salad and turkey first, pretzels and juice last. And it worked, partly. The 3 o'clock crash softened. He stopped falling fully asleep in the chair, but he was still foggy, still going for the cookies most days, just with slightly less desperation. Here is where the second piece came in. Richard ate lunch in 11 minutes at his desk. He had done it for 30 years. He was not chewing so much as processing. Speed of eating is its own separate lever, independent of order. Chewing is not a formality. It is the first stage of breaking food apart, and food that arrives at your stomach in large pieces versus a fine paste behaves differently on the way through. More than that, your fullness hormones run about 20 minutes behind your mouth. Eat a meal in 11 minutes, and you have finished before your body has any chance to tell you it has had enough. So Richard had fixed his order, but he was still delivering the whole meal in 11 minutes. He had reorganized the traffic and left the speed limit alone. He set a timer on his phone. 20 minutes minimum, and he was not allowed to eat at his desk. He hated it for about 2 weeks. He said it felt like being sent to sit in the corner. Then the crash stopped. Not gradually. He noticed it because his daughter called at 3:40 on a Thursday, and they talked for half an hour, and she asked him what had changed, and he could not immediately say. That was 6 months in. The crossword by his window chair, the one he had stopped finishing for 2 years. He finished it that afternoon and did not particularly notice he had. Here's the honest part, and I want to be honest with you rather than tidy. Richard's fasting glucose did not transform. It came down some. His A1C, which is the 3-month average of your blood sugar, moved from the edge of prediabetes back into a comfortable range, but it was not dramatic. What changed dramatically was his afternoons. He got about 4 hours of his day back that he had written off as age. Sometimes the number moves a little, and the life moves a lot. And I would take that trade every time. The thing he said that stayed with me was this. He told me he had spent 2 years assuming his body was winding down, when the truth was, his body had been sending him the same message twice a day, every day, and he had been answering it with shortbread cookies. So let me give you what to actually do this week. First, at every meal that contains bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, or anything sweet, eat your vegetables and your protein first, and put the carbohydrate last. Not a different meal. Same meal, new sequence. This works because of that stomach door and the fiber gel, and it is free. Second, put something acidic at the front. A vinaigrette on the salad, lemon on the fish, a tablespoon of vinegar in a glass of water 10 minutes before you sit down. It slows the release and slows the starch breakdown. Check with your doctor first if you have reflux, ulcers, or take medication for your stomach. Third, 20 minutes minimum per meal, and not at a desk or in front of a screen. This slows the delivery and lets your fullness signals arrive while there is still food on the plate. Fourth, 10 minutes of walking after your largest meal of the day. Your muscles will pull sugar out of your blood without asking your pancreas for permission. This is the single highest return 10 minutes in your day. Fifth, and this is the one to bring to your doctor. Ask specifically about your after-meal numbers, not only your fasting glucose. Ask whether an A1C is appropriate for you, and if you already test at home, ask whether checking about 90 minutes after your largest meal would tell you something useful. That is the window where the story actually happens, and it is the window the standard morning test never sees. And I want to say this plainly. This video is education, not a plan built for your particular body. Everything here should be discussed with your own doctor, especially if you take any medication for blood sugar, because these changes can genuinely lower your numbers. And if you are on medication that also lowers them, the two together need supervision. Never adjust a dose on your own, not once. There are also things that should send you to a doctor promptly, rather than trying any of this. Increased thirst that will not settle, getting up repeatedly at night to urinate when that is new for you, unexplained weight loss, blurred vision that comes and goes, cuts on your feet that are slow to heal, or numbness and tingling in your feet. Any of those, make the appointment. And if you ever feel shaky, sweaty, confused, or unusually weak, that is low blood sugar, and it needs attention that day, not next week. Here is what I want you to take from this. Your body is not winding down on you. That 3 o'clock fog is not a countdown. It is a message delivered on schedule, twice a day, in the only language your body has. And you now know how to answer it with something other than a cookie. Somebody you know is falling asleep in a chair in the afternoon and has decided it is just their age. A brother, a neighbor, the man 2 doors down who used to walk his dog and does not anymore. That person will never go looking for this video, because it does not occur to anyone to search for an explanation of something they have already accepted. You might be the only route this reaches them by. Send it to them. And if you want more of this, the actual mechanics of what is happening inside you, rather than a list of things to avoid, subscribe and stay with me. This channel is here to give you back the explanation nobody had time to give you. Next week, I want to talk about why so many people over 60 wake up at exactly the same time every night, somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning, and why the answer is often sitting in your bloodstream rather than in your bladder or your mind. I'm Dr. James Weatherly. Take good care of yourself this week.